Hey everyone, so I gave a little bit of a break yesterday because I've got a little bit of a problem with one of my eyes. So I was just sleeping it off yesterday a little bit, and hence why I've got my blue cut glasses on today. But I think what I'm going to do today before we start getting into the more serious stuff next week is I'm just going to play a tiny little bit of, what's it called? Armored Core Fires of Rubicon, which I'm just clicking on now. And then what I'll do is we're just going to talk through a little few things that have been occurring in the video game sort of news for the moment. Let me just grab my controller a second. So again, we're still on the 8-bit DOE. I'll tab out of this one moment, and then my window capture should start working soon. So window capture properties. It does not like with Fires of Rubicon. It consistently defaults to full screen for some, and I don't know why. So I'm in the graphics setting now, and you can't see here, but I'm just changing it to borderless window. And then, okay, I can now tab out, and I can also now bring it up. So there we are. So that's a bit of an annoyance, right? But this is actually, there's a reason why I've chosen this game, and it's because it's the first game I've played where I've noticed the difference in the controller. Whereas in other games, and I've been thinking on this, and I think the reason is not only due to the input, but when you execute the input on a lot of games like Resident Evil, etc., there's sort of a few milliseconds that are also taken up by animation keyframes, whereas this seems to be much more immediate. So let's just go for a simple mission here, and I've made my AC look like my computer, so my computer is the same color scheme as that. So what I want to talk about is, let me just tab out of this. But what I want to talk about is a few things have been going on in the video game industry recently, which are worth noting. So first of all, we've got Resident Evil 9, which if I believe in 4 days, I know in a few days, let's say a few days. This is not a news channel. This is just me talking about things that I've heard. But Resident Evil 9 has broke 5 million copies in just a few days, breaking all records for the series, and quite honestly, that's a very impressive number regardless of what series it is. And then that was followed up with Silent Hill 2 announcing that it has over 500 units shipped. So that's not 5 million sales like Resident Evil, that's 5 million over subscriptions and stuff as well, but still very impressive. And it's nice to see that both series are actually fine and well. They're doing healthy. Looks like survival horror is going absolutely nowhere. So that's really good news that these are series that are doing well. And then on the back of that as well, there's some even more good news for horror enthusiasts, and that is Shinji Mikami of Resident Evil, The Evil Within, and even more recently Tango Gameworks with what's that game called, Ghostwire Tokyo, right? He's opened up his own studio, and I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's also looking for talent. So I'm guessing that's in the imminent stages of something happening. So very good news for Resident Evil fans, very good news for survival horror fans like myself in general. But then comes some bad news as well in the gaming industry, which is Nagoshi Studios, who is led by Nagoshi-sama. Very, very well respected developer, basically created the Yakuza series, which is a multi-billion-dollar series, you know, with decades and decades of legacy. He was making a game called Gang of Dragon with I forget the name, but there was a Korean actor gentleman who was the face of it, and he was only just teased at last year's Game Awards, so, you know, sort of 4 months ago, right, folks? It's very short amount of time ago. But NetEase have just pulled funding and gave them notice that funding is going to stop in May. And not only that, but I believe there's also quite a ruckus regarding the actual intellectual property, where NetEase wants the total amount invested returned, or they're basically going to keep all assets developed during you know, the period that it was being made. So that's, I mean, that's a learning point for, I think, everyone in the industry. And I think it's kind of crazy how when a well-known series, well-known Japanese series with a lot of parallels, I know they're not the same same genre, but there's a lot of parallels where you see, you know, Shinji Mikami, and you'd see Resident Evil 9, and they're doing very, very well. And in the same week, the Resident Evil 9, you know, breaks all records conceivable. NetEase pulls funding for another legendary developer and another legendary series. I tried speaking to a few people about it on Game Dev on Reddit, but it seems that Game Dev is a misnomer. Hobby Dev, it should be called. But I won't get into that. I think that I'm going to stop using Reddit. I've only been on there sort of less than 3 weeks, and I think it's clearly not got a purpose for Banshee Interactive, unfortunately. But I think that, you know, NetEase is one of those things where you have these Chinese investors, and they don't have the respect for the art. They just don't, and that's not. They you know, they're not. There's no skin in the game, the same way there is in Japan, and I don't know, Western studios are also getting this way as well. But, you know, I would have thought that, you know, Gang of Dragon was a way to print money, basically. You know, certain success. You know, people who love Yakuza love Yakuza. Yakuza comes, I think last year 2 Yakuza games came out, and both of them did very well, both in sales and, you know, critically. So I think that there's, you know, there's want for that legacy, especially when we saw things like Judgment. I think that Judgment showed that there was a want for something a little bit darker than. And people have been screaming for a follow-up to Sleeping Dogs, which I know Yakuza, Sleeping Dogs, True Crime, they're completely separate, but they're also of the same cloth, cut of the same cloth, I think. So it bewilders me that they would do this, and they would do it in such a disrespectful manner, to be handed, you know, less than 3 months' notice. You know, even if he had a buyer lined up, you know, legalities, due diligence, that sort of thing, it takes a lot of time. You know, this is a conversation I would have expected to have held a bit more decorum than it currently does, and that's a disappointment to me. And I think it overshadows all of the good things that are happening in the industry. But let's hope that you know, these good things keep carrying on, so that NetEase, you know, is seen the fool. That's all people can do, right? But this isn't the first time NetEase has done something like this, but I've not looked into it deeply. But I do know that they have a track record of this, and this is something that I think people need to really think about when they approach certain investors. How much skin in the game they have. Are they in this for the long haul? Are they in this for IP development? Are they in this for cross-media sales? Are they in this for licensing? Or are they just looking for a cash grab, an in and out, something to look good on their quarterlies? And that's something that, you know, is sad to see, because NetEase, whilst they do have their, you know, their netcast, they had some very, very prestigious IP. But like most things, you know, this is the way of the world, and this is what you have to be aware of. But back to the game, as you can see, it's almost instantaneous. This is one of those games where, you know, you can definitely tell the difference between the input on the 8-bit DOE compared to the general Xbox controller. And I prefer to play this with keyboard and mouse for that exact reason, but this sort of bridges that gap nicely. I still don't think I would swap keyboard and mouse for it though. Even with my mechanical keys, there's just something about instantaneous input that relates to the Armoured core a little better. But anyway, I thought I would do at least a little bit of a video. Let's get out of here. Let's get back over to my splash screen. And you know, this is all stuff that I don't really want to relay information to. I just want to open dialogue and my thoughts and feelings on it. You can get this information yourself, whether it's from gaming journalism, or whether it's from independent journalism, or whether it's from financial journalism. You know, Bloomberg, Forbes, IGN, everyone's covering it. So I would definitely suggest that you do your own research and come to your own conclusions. But I feel like it's been a bittersweet week. Very sweet in the sense that even with Resident Evil 9, they're saying DLC's in development. Is standard, we knew it was. But seeing those sales, seeing Silent Hill, even though it's been over a longer period of time, seeing that Silent Hill has also received a reception worthy, and the same with, you know, Remedy, even though Alan Wake, critically, and in my opinion, I would still say Alan Wake is it's hard to say this or that, right? But Alan Wake is a benchmark of our generation, of this generation, should I say, especially on PC. And then, you know, Shinji Mikami going out doing his own thing. It's just soured by the fact that, you know, NetEase and that whole debacle, because there's only so much you can do with a little bit of money, right? And this is where the money's coming from at the moment. You know, Annapurna, Tencent, but they're not coming from your usual sources. I know that, you know, Sony poured a lot of money into Lost Soul Aside and has certain things going on here and there, but in general, the money is sort of it's washed, isn't it, from left to right hand, and to see a revival, that's the word I wanted to look for, to see a revival be cut short is disappointing. So let's just hope my eye gets a little bit better. Let's hope that Nagoshi-sama, who I respect with, you know, utter deference, he is a legend within the industry, manages to push forward with Gangs of Dragon. And most of all, let's end this with our usual slogan. This is Banshee Interactive. I'm David Roberts. And remember, this is not a simulation. And that goes for every single person working on every single one of the games that I'm talking about. The 150 people that Mikami is looking for his studio. Mikami-sensei, very much looking forward to seeing what he does next. All the people who don't know they're going to have a job or not in Nagoshi Studios in 3 months' time, this is not a simulation. This is our reality.